You're listening to iLive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio. iLive Radio.
Talks honest. Talks honest. Talks honest. Talks honest. Hello and welcome to Talks Honest. You are tuned into iLive Radio UK, changing the way you listen to radio. I'm your host, Miss Law, and this is a platform and an opportunity for you to discuss topics never spoken but often thought of. You can connect with us by contacting 0208 638 8503 or www.uk.iliveradio.com.
We spoke honestly. What if we spoke honestly? 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 What if we spoke honestly?
Today's topic is: why would you not allow us to read and write? Joining me on today's show is Miss Mode and Miss Browne. Now let's just think about that. Why would you not allow us to read and write? Now people are probably thinking, what do you mean by that? What does she mean by that statement or that question? So let's go back. Let's go back to when there were slave masters. Slave masters fearing a black person being literate. Fearing that would impact the slave system that they had in place. It's a deep thought. So let's just sit here for a second and just think about that. A system that relies on slaves to be dependent on their slave masters. You know, laws forbidding slaves to learn basic rights to read and write. And even to the point that if you were taught to read and write, the person who was teaching you would be subjected to punishment. That's quite deep. It's a lot to think about, to be quite honest. Do we actually think about it is another question. Have we ever thought about it? Has it ever had any relevance to us here today? So let's just think about that. Think about all those things that I just mentioned. And let's go into discussion and see where it takes us. Now there's an awkward silence here right now, and I kind of understand why, because we don't really think about not being able to read and write, or should I say not being allowed to read and write. For us here today, we were always allowed to read and write. So we never really had to think about not having that or not being able to do something. Ladies.
Yeah, good afternoon.
when I saw this subject come up, it's something where you had to really sit back and think, because me as a child growing up, I had that privilege to be taught to read and write. I can't imagine going back to slavery times where you said there's an actual law that came out that forbids black people from reading, writing, or just learning. They more or less put you're just a slave, you're just going to do what I tell you to do, and that's that. I can't imagine for myself someone stopping me, saying that I can't read or write or learn something. At the same time, with some of these slaves, most of them, or more or less all of them, were educated in some way.
That's right.
I feel we are the original creators.
100%. I agree.
In some ways, it might not have been academic, but we were very skillful and still skillful people. I feel some of us have lost, or maybe not that self-confident to know that you can do anything that you want to if you put your mind to it. But just drawing it back to like physically thinking someone's telling me, no, you can't read and write. I just can't imagine the thoughts and feelings they must have gone through. But from seeing some movies and documentaries, you knew there was at least one person who could basically read at a basic level, but they understood words, but they were also willing to learn and also willing to help a fellow slave. But it was a thing of, well, if the slave master caught you, even with a book,
there were repercussions.
And the book could be a Bible.
As simple as that, a Bible.
As simple as that. If you was caught with that, they would take that away and they'll rip the pages or even burn it. So it's just like I can't put myself in that position, but I would have felt like, well, what else is there for me to do then? What am I just going to be working these fields for the rest of my life and then just die?
Yeah, I think for some of them it wasn't always the case, like you said, like those slaves which were house slaves had or were given opportunities to maybe to learn,
so to speak.
Exactly, were so-called privileged to learn how to read and write, but only to the means and the ends of the actual owner.
Yes, correct.
So, for example, if it was somebody that maybe could be doing a role, could be accountancy, might have to do chores, take letters to the post, collect something from in town, etc. From my understanding, those slaves were the ones that had the opportunity to learn how to read and write, but at the same time there was restrictions with that. They weren't allowed to share it with others or educate their children as such. Same with the children of the slaves, of the house slaves. They also, in some cases, had opportunity to be taught by the slave master's children, because children are not going to be aware that they can't do something. So if, say for example, you've grown up with a slave playing in your household all this time, or you know that child to be around you all that time, the child, for the children, they wouldn't know no different, you know. They wouldn't know, oh, I can't teach as they would see the other child, a friend, how to read and write. However, the consequences for that child being caught with a book or something like that could then end up with lashings. How that child, I mean, it's very deep. Like, I mean, if you look at the levels of it, it's actually really, really deep.
Yeah, and remember as well, there was a colorism system.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The more lighter you was in the home, and that's where you would possibly get some basic reading and writing. The darker you were, they treated those slaves more or less worse than an animal.
Yeah. Your worth was less.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
So you just said something. So their worth was probably the equivalent of an animal.
Or even less.
And even less. Now an animal is pretty low when you're saying and less, you know, when it comes to being a human being. Now you have an individual who doesn't know too much about growth. It's more about survival and opportunities that arise to better their circumstances. You know, education isn't something for example, go to school. Today you go to school, you come home from school, you do homework. That didn't exist.
Yeah, there wasn't a legal requirement like as today. There's a legal requirement. Your children have to be in school. I think it's the age of 5.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a legal requirement for that, and if they're absent, then questions are going to be asked. However, in that time, questions weren't asked. You don't need to know. It was like a need to know basis, basically,
that.
and as far as certain people were concerned, we didn't need to know.
Yeah. So when you think about that, it's kind of heart-wrenching, because they needed to know, but we didn't need to know. So we served a purpose for them, and we were only ever going to amount to one thing, is what they had us as. So at no given point will we said to, okay, yeah, you may have escalated to be a house slave, or you're a field slave, but there was nothing else. Basically, you didn't need to read, you didn't need to write, unless it was to their benefit or to their children's benefit, or you served a purpose for them to be able to have you do their errands. But you were not allowed to share that skill or that knowledge and that experience that you had gained by chance, because it's by chance.
Yeah,
you just happen to be liked as an individual, brought into the home, and you're able to better yourself. There are other people amongst you, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, that weren't given that opportunity, and probably never even thought about those opportunities, because as far as they're concerned, I do my chores, I get my meal, I get some sleep. I survive.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
So that privilege wasn't necessarily a privilege to them, because it wasn't something they utilised or used.
Yeah, it wasn't used for their benefit.
Exactly.
I think it maybe became more utilised with them when they realised that maybe other family members or close relatives were trying to get in contact with them, and then letters were sent, hidden messages, or just say hidden letters were sent to them in order for them to know, actually, we're here for you, you're not alone. Because I feel like a lot of this was done to make each individual on plantations or whatever to feel like they were alone, they
segregate them.
Basically, they had no way to get out.
There was no future.
Yeah, basically. However, once things kind of changed, I do feel like that's when fear emotionally kicked in, when they was like, actually, they saw the potential, and that's why there was only certain slaves that were used, because the potential that they showed, that person actually just got potential to do this, and this is how I'm going to benefit from it. I don't know whether within the system today it kind of still shows a bit of that, but
There's still conditioning.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, we've really kind of dug deep already. And now I want to bring it modern, and I want to go back as well. So we had parents that weren't able to read and write. We had the token one or two who were able to read and write, and they taught their fellow slaves how to read and write secretly. But how did they feel? How could they have felt about being able to do something that they're not allowed to do? Doing it, trying to help others, but at the end of the day not knowing whether they even survive to be able to do anything with that skill.
So that's the key word, survive.
Yeah.
I feel as reading and writing is important, I don't think that was their number one priority. Their priority was to keep the slave master happy, to pick the cotton that they needed to do so they can make the money for the slave master. So it was all about survival.
Yeah, just to be able to have a life.
Yeah. Well, whatever life they could have on that plantation, because that life itself, it's like, as a race, we're one of the strongest to deal with that for
when it comes to endurance,
so
we are
years.
Definitely fighters, 100%.
But I will say there was a keenness to us willing to learn, whether it is through reading and writing or just to learn a skill, and we were very quick on that. On that learning process.
I think that for us, knowledge was power. And the more knowledge we had, whether it was in a skill which meant that it was practical and we used our hands, or whether it was mental and we had to think about it, the fact that we had that knowledge and was able to share that made us stronger people.
I think that has a lot to do as well with those activists who were out there trying to make change for slaves. You know, they had the opportunities to read and write, so they made way for those individuals who weren't able to read and write. And just that in itself says a lot, because you're a number of people in a place, but you're not connected. You are connected to a degree, but you're not connected in other ways that could benefit you. Now to be 30, 40 people and only 2 of you can read or write is like, they're like gold dust, those 2 individuals.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, when you said that, I thought of hope. So the word hope came to mind for me, like that 1 or 2 people within that group of people that could actually read and write, that was hope for everybody else. And kind of was uplifting, and I feel gave them more strength to say, actually, do you know what, we can keep going. We can get through this. You know, there's hope for us yet, kind of. That's what I got from what you just said. I just feel like it kind of signified hope for me if I was in that time. And maybe I couldn't read or write, however, I know that Miss Mode round the corner, she just lives in that little hut just a couple doors down from me. Actually, she can read, she can write, or maybe her children can read and her children can write. There's hope for me still. Maybe I might not be able to learn that skill, however my children might be able to learn that skill. And like we know, with generations we pass things on.
That's right.
You know, thinking about this conversation and just knowing that, okay, there were the token few that were allowed to read and write. And just if you were teaching someone, like what the repercussions would have been if you were fined are found to be doing or teaching us?
Yeah, I think there were different extremes.
I mean, the extremes are...
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You just because you didn't want someone to read or write, you were happy to imprison them, whip them, rape them,
Take off their hands,
take off their thumbs. It's like really?
Yeah.
their tongues.
But even on a so-called normal day, that was happening anyway.
And, you know, you have to really commend them for their strength, because we often have conversations like, would we be able to survive under the circumstances that they have gone through? You know, would you be able to hold your tongue? Would you be able to, not rebel and fight back? Would you be able to just sing a song to get you through that day?
Most probably not. Like, if realistically thinking about it, most probably not. Maybe I might be that person that be like, you know what, I just need to get through this day, so I'm going to make sure I do my duties, I do my job, and then nothing could be said to me because I've done what I'm supposed to do. And I think that's the mindset that they wanted those people to have at that time. Like, okay, this is all you're here for. This is your job. This is your role. This is your worth. This is actually all you're here for, and nothing less. So I don't think, for me, my end goal would be just to wake up every day and survive.
To actually know that there was a law that prohibited us from reading and writing is kind of like mind-blowing.
It is, yeah.
I mean, like, I'm sitting here and it's not funny, but it's that the sheer audacity that you would create a law to quantify your actions.
I just think I think it was fear, and that too many of us then actually got that skill and was able to read and able to write. So things that were hidden from us, like things of celebration, it could be that another slave had escaped from another plantation.
Yeah.
Hey, you wouldn't get that hope about it if you couldn't read about it, or that message couldn't be passed on.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the law was another way of them suppressing
them. They say knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
And they were definitely trying to hold back on the power for us.
Yeah, because they knew we were a threat.
Yeah. And that's quite daunting as well. The mere fact that some people that are classed as nothing are such a threat to someone who's supposedly something.
But we were worth something. It's just that's what they wanted us to believe.
They just wanted us to believe that we were nothing.
And the only
I was just going to say, and it continues even today.
Yeah.
To the point that we actually begin to believe it.
Yeah.
We talk it. We use their words against ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, the only way that they could keep us in that position was by keep pushing us down. And today, within certain systems, is to hold people back. You can only go so far in certain places, but your persistency and resistance is what has got those people in those times through their hardship. And then today you will see that there is a lot of black writers and poets that are now using all their life experiences to celebrate what we've actually achieved as black people. So in that respect, I feel like we've conquered what they were trying to do, because they haven't been successful in actually being able to stop us from achieving, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
100% it does. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, why did they learn to read and write? We spoke about the fact that some were given opportunities, and it's interesting to know that through those opportunities that arose for certain people, with that hope, those individuals who weren't able to read and write took interest. Because when you think about, okay, we go to work on a day-to-day basis, you're an accountant, you just feel you need to know about numbers, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to know about a doctor's capabilities because you're an accountant.
No, because my numbers is my main focus.
Exactly. So if your main focus is cotton or reaping crops, for you to change that mindset and have that hope to say, if I read, or if I learn to read, or if I learn to write, something better may come of my life. So that hope is a small word with a very, very big meaning. And to have that hope says a lot, because the things that they were subjected to on a day-to-day basis, you didn't even know whether you're going to see tomorrow. But you know you were prepared to take that chance. And when you had your church days, you were learning how to read and write. You know, you utilized it through the church. Or those opportunities when you were able to come together in gatherings.
Yeah.
You know, that's clever. Because your aim is survival, but you're prepared to take that risk to better yourself.
Yeah.
Even in those circumstances.
And I think, the risk that was taken was worth it.
Most definitely.
You know, because today you've got people that are using those same kind of words to uplift others and kind of help them to progress in life and open doors and show them that actually, do you know what, there is actually opportunity for you there. And being able to read and write is actually really important. And, you know, you kind of need to, I'm not saying you need to, but it would be good if you had those skills. Like we were saying before, some people are more practical. It's all about what they can do with their hands, and they don't necessarily see reading and writing to be a necessary skill to have, because like you said, they've coped by doing things practically. Like when we're going into learning, like all people learn differently.
Indeed,
some people learn audio, some people practical, some people it's the theory of it, the writing and the reading of information. When we're looking at those slaves, their way of surviving and their skill was practical. They
physical.
were good at the physicalness of it. They were good at doing those things. So them basically then getting more skills on top of the skills that they already had.
Was
then
a bigger bonus.
Was a bigger bonus. And then made them greater people. Because now, not only were they physically equipped, they were now equipped with knowledge and equipped with a way of passing on that knowledge through writing.
And just to add on to that, remember, they've come from the continent of Africa to a foreign country where their language wasn't English. And the fact that they were willing to want to learn that, I could see why, you know, slave masters or the laws that be enforce that law. Because
it made sense for them.
It's like a, how dare you, we've taken you from your motherland to come to our country, and
for you to
serve us, but you want to learn our language. And the rate of how you're picking it up so quick,
it wasn't part of the plan.
That's right.
And that's why there was fear, you know. You know, that's, you know, like we was talking about the fact that when we go to other foreign countries, and it was mentioned about them being offended by the fact that
speaking their language.
You were saying that, you know, being offended by not knowing another person's language. Whereas today, when you go to other countries, this is my experience, there's a must for them to speak English. Like, so why would they have tried to stop it at the beginning? But now it's a need, like, so that they can accommodate us when we go to visit their country. It's a need that you should be able to speak their language.
I think for us it was more about stripping us of our identity. Once they had stripped us of our identity, and we felt that we were nothing, you know, they could have their wicked way with us.
Do what they wanted.
Once we had lost belief in who we were as individuals, we wouldn't understand our scope and where we could go to. So stripping us of that gave them that power to control us, dictate to us, tell us where to go from where not to go, and how to do things. And
sorry to interrupt you, but it sounds a bit like today with the COVID.
It is. Sorry. Thank you very well. This is where I was going.
Okay, sorry.
Nothing's really changed.
No.
It's just a different type of slavery.
Yeah.
We have jobs that slave masters give us now. They pay us, they tax us. It's the same system, just has changed with the times. Okay? You pay the tax man,
you don't get penalised.
You don't pay the tax man, you get penalised. There are repercussions for everything you do and don't do. So we haven't changed, just time has changed.
That's it.
Okay? I think people need to be aware of that. Yes, things are more modern and things are more readily available because of the times that we live in. But check us as a people. We have made steps. But have we really made steps to make that difference?
Well, yeah, I feel like we've actually made progress in certain ways where there's more of us that can read and write. And
reading and writing. Okay, I'm going to stick a pin right there, and I'll tell you why I'm going to stick a pin. Some of us have aunties and uncles who cannot even read today. Right now, they don't have that capability to read and write, and they've got through life not being able to read or write.
So true. And
they've struggled, but
so
they've
true.
got through. And when I think about that, that makes me feel we haven't travelled that far. Because we can't have generations such as our parents and great aunts that can sit down and have conversations with us right now, today, and tell us that they cannot read and write. So how far have we travelled is the question.
I think that even though our aunties and uncles and even grandparents were not equipped as much as we are today, because of their sacrifice, we were able to have that opportunity. So growing up, for me, education was a big thing. So what's happened is they've kind of said, okay, it's important for us. They've made that something that's important for us, so that we're not put in that position again where we can't read or we can't write. I mean, I know the school system still might stop us from doing that by not understanding our culture and then still trying to put children into units and things like that. However, as parents, we are still trying to encourage our children to read and write and instill that education is important.
Because you know what's interesting, I've just thought about this right now, and now thinking back, it's like I kind of get it. Christmas time, where your parents will buy you presents, they buy their Christmas cards. Now, for me, in my household, I was the only one who had to write out Christmas cards for different family members and friends.
And that was just your role, but you didn't actually understand, did you?
Doing it, I thought it was a chore.
Okay.
Like, why am I doing this? Like I know my mum can write, but why are you always coming to me? And it was the box, you know, you get the box of 10 or 20. And I had to sit there, and my mum's like, yeah, this one is for auntie, this is for uncle, right? And I had to write, and obviously she's noticed my handwriting, and it's neat. And like she says, oh, I want you to write because you've got nice handwriting.
Yeah, they quantify why they want you to do it.
So now thinking about this subject, about reading and writing, it's like she wanted me to do that, not just necessarily because she doesn't want to do it. It's to further my development on how to write properly, making sure it's written straight and it's not like at a slant or anything like that. So that's just coming to my brain right now.
I was going to say, you saying that, I remember when having to do my homework, and if it wasn't done correctly, your parents would rub it back out and make you do it again. And rub it out and do it again. And like you said, you thought it was like a punishment or something, but it was actually to better the skill that they wanted you to have.
That's right.
Because the skill that they had wasn't to that standard.
They wasn't given that opportunity.
And it's really weird because I always used to say to my dad, God, Dad, your handwriting's like a doctor. I can't even understand it. There were small letters and big letters, and I'm like, what's going on? But you don't really think about it like that, do you? You don't think about the fact that maybe their parents couldn't read or write.
I was going to say, and also more in men or young boys, you will see with handwriting how it's not formed as much. And if we go back to slavery times, the men were the ones that did all I'd say more of the labouring.
That's correct.
No, I would say that they were more out on the fields doing stuff, so maybe they didn't have that opportunity to actually do the writing. So yeah.
Okay, we're gonna introduce Mr. Morris, who's just joined us. It's very rare that we get a gentleman. When we do get a gentleman in the room, we kind of embrace that, don't we, ladies?
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. Well, I've been listening in to the show. First of all, it's a great show that you've got here, Miss Law. And picking up on what you ladies has been talking about today has kind of made me really come through and put my spin on it. So in the beginning, you were speaking about how they weren't allowed to read and write. However, what I want actually calling to say, but I thought let me come in and directly speak about it. What the white man done was actually to stop us or brainwash us over a period back in the 18th and 17th century, the slavery times. However, the reason why they've gone and done this is because obviously before we was the powered people, so to speak. So this is going way back to our very first ancestry days. As Miss Mo turned around and said that we are the original creators, and we created many things, as in reading and writing. If you want to go back to hieroglyphics and all that type of stuff, we were the creators of that. I'm not up on particular dates, but one thing I do know, I've got to send a big shout out to Fat Daddy Chef Fat Daddy, for educating me on certain things that I didn't know, and a few other people in my life, including my father and that. But what sticks out in my head is that where they weren't able to read and write, as you have all mentioned, the fearfulness of the black person uprising again and being the dominant race. So for them it was like, okay, look, let's bring in this Christianity, religion and so on and so forth, and indoctrinate their minds of a different way of thinking. Going to certain parts of the islands, over the Africas and the West Indies, and taking these people who wasn't educated back then and giving them that kind of white man's knowledge, putting them in the fields, as Miss Browne turned around and said, having some as house slaves and field slaves, and having those in the house, educating them to a certain level. Now, for black people to be in the house and take that chance to actually go to their fellow slaves in the field is a big, mighty step. Because as you lot has already said, they risk being punished to severity of death. So it's a big major thing. Moving forward, we are really privileged to be able to read and write.
We are
hands
indeed.
down. We are privileged, and we take that for granted to a certain degree.
We most definitely do.
We're here, we're educated by, let's say, I'm going to say the white man system. So we're still kind of enslaved to a certain degree and not shown certain stuff. However, they say, and we as black people know, if you want to find something, look in a book.
Read.
Yeah, read it. Yeah. Just recently, you lot talking about the males not being able to write, or the boys writing a certain way.
Yeah.
My father, and I don't actually know how this come about, but my father had the most beautiful handwriting, pervasive and everything. Now, this could be from him coming to this country at an early age and going straight into the army and learning the skill set there, probably.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And then you're talking about you was given that chore to write out the Christmas cards. I was given the exact same chore, and I did think it was a chore.
Me too.
However, my handwriting, and this is not me being boastful, but I've got really good handwriting. And you know, I know how to form all my letters and all that. You know, so I'm privileged to have that. I now look at it as an adult as a privilege and not so much a chore.
Yeah.
And the more we kind of get our youth to understand that they've got to read, and I'm not talking about comic books because that's what we was into back then. We weren't looking at books, and unless we was in school, you know, we're reading those Ladybird books and other books we've got. But our own black cultural books, they're in abundance out there now. So we have to make sure that our next generations to come, get that insight and explain to them these type of things, give them the history from where they come from, that we wasn't able to have this knowledge and power, even though we had it many moons ago. We lost it. We're now getting it back through, you know, us being able to communicate on the levels that we can now.
It seems that they conveniently erased that. And you know, as far as they're concerned, is we only came about from slavery, as nothing. So it's important that we actually pay attention to what privileges we have now. And I say privileges because technically speaking, they are privileges that we are able to do what we're able to do now, based on the fact that we weren't allowed to do these things that we originally created. Now look at that. That's like a coin being flipped on its head 3 times, to the point that we introduce something. You see our capabilities and our skills and our power. You take it away from us. Then we come back and we learn it your way.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Can I read something that I got off of a site called Black Pages? It goes, the United States is the only country known to have prohibited the education of enslaved. During the era of slavery in the United States, the education of enslaved African Americans, except for religious instruction, was discouraged and eventually made legal in most of the southern states. After 1831, the revolt of Nat Turner, the prohibition was extended in some states to free blacks as well. It also goes on to say slave owners saw literacy as a threat to the institution of slavery and their financial investment in it. As in North Carolina, statute stated, teaching slaves to read and write tends to excite dissatisfaction in their minds and to produce insurrection and rebellion. First literacy enabled enslaved to read the widely distributed writings of abolitionists. Who informed readers about the slave revolution in Haiti of 1791 to 1804 and the end of slavery in the British Empire in 1833. It also allowed slaves to discover that thousands of enslaved had escaped, often with the assistance of underground railroads, to safe refuge in northern states and Canada.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going when I was talking about the hope.
Right.
So you remember what I was saying? I was talking about the fact that because then people were able to read and information was able to be passed on. The hope then built within those colonies 100%. And things like that.
The greatest thing is they had people working underground doing putting those links together, even though they didn't have the capability to read or write. People were relaying information to them, which made them understand, okay, there are options, there's hope. So even though you're not able to do certain things, we're still trying to make a way for those who can't.
Totally.
So that togetherness, even though they were divided, is like, that should give us hope, you know, and admiration for those individuals who, technically, when I think about where we are today and where they were at, it's devastating. It's like two different worlds. But because we now are subjected to a modern day slavery, we could never relate to that. We couldn't, I don't think we could survive in that, because we don't have those skills that they had, those survival skills, that hope to carry on a day-to-day basis, knowing that, you know, there's really not going to be any change.
I don't think we would never ever fathom it or understand it.
Yeah.
We can imagine as much as we can, and by readings that we've been taught, we can kind of like, again, imagine what it would have been like. Because even some of those readings that we have, they're not totally correct. It's just another man's story or his view on it. So we would never be able to fathom it or anything. I mean, we're living in a Western society right now where, you know, standard, 5 years old, you're going to school, you're taught, you pick up what your parents taught you, you know what I mean? It's just, if you're able to kind of decipher and read between the lines, you know, and pick sense out of common sense, then you'll realize, well, actually, yeah, all of that was just crap back in the day, and this is how it should have been, and we are powered people, and this is the way we need to move forward. You know, just, it's confidence within yourself and knowing that you are worth a lot more than people, you know, give you credit for. If that makes any sense.
And I was going to add to that by just saying, like, there's more young writers out there today, more young black writers out there today that are actually using their experiences to celebrate themselves and us as black people. So, you know, I would kind of suggest that we kind of try to encourage our next generation to kind of look for those books, because like you said, Mr. Morris, that is, you know, they reading the book to get the information, but they can't just read one book. They need to read more than one book to kind of get a full understanding.
Yeah, it's about the understanding.
Like you said, it's written by man, so it's going to be someone else's perspective on their experience, maybe during that time.
I mean, people might go against me for saying this, but I would actually encourage reading The White Man's Lie. Just so you know what they are, the words that they're spreading, so you can counteract it in the correct way. Yeah. Do you understand? So
I think that is quite important, because you need to understand what you're in. Yeah. To understand what you need to get out of. Totally. You know, I want to take this opportunity to just ask you all to just give me your final thoughts on today's discussion, or what words you would share with an individual who could be listening out there today. Miss Mode?
It's been a very interesting, deep topic. It has made me think more about taking more advantage of learning more, because of what they went through, where they didn't have it at all, and the fact that I've got it today, and it's like a lazy approach now. Like, I can read and write, but that's it. I don't need to do nothing else. But nah, knowledge is power.
It is.
And I would strongly recommend to everybody, not just young people, but everybody, to learn to read more, to educate yourself more, especially about our history, and not necessarily starting from slavery, going back to where we were kings and queens.
Miss Browne.
Yeah, I would just alliterate exactly what you just said, but also we should know that doors will be open. When another door closes, another door opens, so that we shouldn't actually give up hope on things. if our people were able to survive what happened to them then, we are more than capable of surviving the things that we go through, and we just need to persevere. And like everybody else has said, knowledge is power. Read more. If you can't read, there's audio now, so there's no excuse for you not to be able to gain that knowledge.
And Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I'm a optimist, and I believe that, as much as people may think that we're in a bad state at this present moment, I think we're in a really good state. And I'm going to quote something from our very own Fox. We haven't come this far to just come this far. So, we progress, and we remember where we've come from, and it's poignant that this is celebrating Black history. We celebrate Black history, period, 24/7, 365. But going forward, it's all about showing the next generation that this is how far we've come. Keep continuing, keep progressing. We've got a lot of producers out there that's doing a lot with music and in film and the arts and culture. So keep your head up, go through the struggles that some of our forefathers and foresisters went through, and just continue.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for listening to today's show. As we have said, knowledge is key, is power, is strength, is hope. With all these things, we can go places that we probably think that we could never go. Our ancestors have travelled a journey that's made our path a little easier. The struggles and just the overall life must have been so hard for them to get through a day to day. So be thankful for what we have, and just appreciate how far we've travelled thus far. We have a lot more to travel for. We have more steps to take, and we're not quite at our destination. So knowledge is power. Keep educating yourselves. Read, write, communicate, and just understand that you can always strive to better. I want to take this opportunity to wish you a blessed evening, afternoon, morning, good night, and God bless.
What if we spoke honestly? What if we spoke honestly? What if we spoke honestly?